Hello there. I am so glad you're here tonight because I'm Kat Hobson. This is Fate Mag Radio, the online voice of Fate Magazine, and I am so looking forward to tonight's show. We've got so much information for you. This is my guest tonight is Mark Elliot Fults, and he is really and truly, out of all these years of paranormal work I've done, he is the best metaphysician and kind of the scariest metaphysician I've ever worked with. And he will blow your mind, which is why he's here, because that's what fate does, right? So before we get started, I am so excited. I have in my hands the new book by Cheryl Costa. It's a spy novel, and it's called The Second Oldest Profession. And Cheryl is trans, but she was in her other life a very handsome man who was a military intelligence specialist. And now that she has become a very attractive woman and is doing ufology and writing so many books, this is her history. So I think that you're going to love it. I have her coming on with me soon, and we're going to be discussing this more. But I just wanted to turn you on to the fact that it is coming out, and you need to be checking it out. Now, my guest, I am so excited, and I'm going to read this stuff because I'm going to tell you this man is so accomplished. I will forget a title if I don't put my specs on. Now, he is a he has survived death. Okay. That's the first really amazing thing for him. But he's known for the Chattanooga Chills um, books. And he's a good good storyteller. I'm not going to lie, even. He has worked with other people putting out The Darkest Corner, Necrophilia, Necromancy, and the Functioning of a Working Psychic. He is his second Chattanooga Chills, the Scream Louder, right? And you will. Web of Terror, a short story collection, and Cinch Hill put that together, and Mark's a contributor. And there's so many. Um, it's just really amazing what all he does. And let me bring him in so that you can meet him. Hello, Mark. I'm so glad you're
Hello,
here.
Cat. Oh, thank you for
Now, I did
inviting
not even
me.
mention, well, you know what? I love talking to you. I could do this every month. With no problem. Might eat into your time a little bit, but I wanted to also to mention, and I neglected to in the intro, that you own a really cool little metaphysical store called Gypsy Moon.
Yes, I love it. It's my little baby.
I love it too. So,
It's in Pace, Florida, at the Pea Ridge Flea Market, and it's just a cute little hole in the wall with lots
yeah,
of Halloween year round, basically. Uh,
yes,
for where I do my readings and things like that, and I carry incense and just unusual. I'm going to carry a lot more unusual stuff, but right now it's very sweet. I love it.
I love it too. And it is very sweet. And you've opened your doors to Denise and Ron Pridemore as they're bringing their paranormal meetups there too.
Yes, they're very sweet. And those have been very successful. We've had a very good turnout, and everyone has a good time, and there's no, people get to share without the ego
Yeah.
mania stuff or any of that. I wouldn't allow that kind of stuff, and I haven't had to worry about that because there's all sorts of people coming and talking, and they just want to hang out with people who think differently.
Yeah.
So and share. So it's fun.
Well, I'm glad it is. I've known Denise for years, and
Yep.
I think that she is, and Ron too. They're some of the nicest people I know. And I think that,
Very sweet.
we both are part of the Things Network, which, by the way, celebrated 15 years. So, congratulations to all of us.
Yeah.
So, but, I think that they have such a they're such a good team. They work well together. Denise has brilliant skills too, and but hers are very subtle. You, however, don't have a subtle bone in your body. So,
Well, when you crash into the wall head first, subtle goes out the window.
yeah, and you all, yeah, when I said you're a survivor of death, I was not exaggerating. So,
No,
do you
no.
want to share that or
I, I'll share it. I know people. I mean, because it. I have to talk about it anytime, all the way, all the time, because it's where it's really for some people it's the death is the ending, and for me it was
yes,
the beginning, and it's
yes,
really been the beginning, and everything I do grows out of being murdered, being attacked, dying out of that, and coming back, and getting to go through the near death experience, and going through the tunnel, which is a dendrite, and going into the consciousness a little, and seeing all the people there, and feeling the absolute incredible uh, want. It's like they want you, they need you, they love you. It's like
yeah,
you've been away. That's like come on, come on, come on. And so it's really changed everything for me. It hasn't made life easy, but
true.
it's I wouldn't take any money for it, because as far as like I wouldn't change anything, and and at 62 I seem to be blossoming a little bit, which is kind of weird for people. That most people blossom when they're in their 20s. Well, I'm blossoming at 62.
Well, and we're the same age, so we're blossoming together actually, which is
Sure.
different levels, different skill sets, but still, it's a good time.
Yeah, it's a very good time. I enjoy being older. I actually enjoy being fatter. It's not, my body doesn't lie. I mean, it gives me trouble out of it, but oh my goodness. When I used to be too skinny,
Yeah,
that's why I call myself the fat circuit, because I love having some weight behind me. If somebody bothers me now, I'll just sit on them, you know.
not even. But it's so funny because you have always called yourself the fat psychic, and we've known each other for
Yep.
years now. And then when we met face to face for the first time, I'm like, you are scrawny skinny. You are not fat. And you were not really
No,
scrawny skinny, but you were not fat.
oh, honey. When I was up into my 40s, I was 118, 124 pounds at 6'2".
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I've gained basically 100 pounds,
Okay.
which is too fat for me, for my structure. But I like it. But like I said, I've got to lose weight. So I have been losing some weight.
Yeah.
But I like being the fat psychic, because I'm like, why not? Because when I was real skinny, my family were this. They always had to pick at you for something or with something. So when I was too skinny, you're too
Yeah.
skinny, you're too skinny, which I couldn't help. It was genetics. And then when I got fat, you're too fat. I'm
Yeah.
like, shut up. Just shut up and go look in the mirror and look at yourself. Quit
Yeah.
worrying about whether I'm fat, or ugly or anything. It's like, go
Isn't
comb
it
your
funny
own
how
damn
people
hair.
isn't it funny how people
So,
just feel so comfortable jumping in with that kind of stuff? I mean, it's like, no, you don't get to go there.
oh, they pick at you like an old, and where I'm from in the South, it's like old crows picking at ripe fruit. Old
Yep.
fruit. They just peck, peck, peck. Something. It's your hair. It's your this. It's your that. You're not married. You're married. I don't like your wife. Why don't you get a wife? I don't like your husband. Where's your? It's
Yep.
crazy. It's they put people like that are unhappy, so they're happy putting being upset, being able to irritate you. So
Well, they
as
make
I got
themselves feel
older, they quit doing
powerful.
as much about. Yeah, well, they come to the wrong platform on this one. So it's like,
It does.
it's my double wide socket derriere.
Yes.
And it's like, it is what it is.
Well,
So, but if that makes them happy, go for it.
when you came through your death experience, um,
uh
people had written you off prior to you
Oh,
showing back
yeah.
up. That had to be
Yeah.
fun.
Well,
I mean,
the fact that, the fact that, I wanted to live
yeah,
and my body was not responding with that. The doctors made decisions, and they may have been talking to my family. My mother was there quite a bit, but they may have been, my mother and them, my family, they were happy for me to go away because I'm just too different than they are. And so, but the doctors just made decisions. Bad. Some of them were very bad. Like my lung was collapsed and it got a staph infection, and they were going to remove it. And I was too weak, or they went, well, you're too weak. You wouldn't make it through the surgery. So they just went scratch. And then, I was going to die anyway. And they were going to remove that lung. I have to tell you, my lung healed, has been functioning, and is at full capacity. They would have taken my lung, and if I had lived without that lung, then I would have been on oxygen, had more of a hard time.
yeah.
And Marfan's people, which I have Marfan's, which is a connective tissue disorder, you have a tendency for your lungs to collapse. So, if you have one lung and it collapses, that's not fun. So,
Well, that's kind of a, you know, done,
kind
isn't
of
it?
yeah. And yeah, it's not a fun thing. So, but they were ready for me to die. They wrote me off. They put me in a room to die. They quit feeding me. They would bring food in. There was a guy tied in a gurney. They'd bring food in for him. There's a little trick they do in the hospital, especially during training month, is if they think you're going to die, they bring in the food and say they brought food. And then
Yes.
they don't feed you, but
They
they'll
did
come
that
and
with
get
my
the food
mother.
later and say yes. And they do it in nursing homes a lot.
Yes.
And people die from starvation and dehydration uh, in nursing homes. Huge amount, huge amount. And
Yeah.
in hospitals, people die from starvation and hydration and sleep deprivation.
Yes.
And what they were doing, they were letting me go the humane way and starving me. And the thing is, after 3 days, you start to feel clear. You're still hungry, but I had emotional hunger after that when I lived. So now, for a long time, if I almost ate the wallpaper off the wall, and and it wasn't about hunger. It's about that. It's like a stray cat, that's not had enough food. They want to eat, eat, eat. And so I have to find. That's one of my biggest issues now is emotional hunger
Hmm.
because I even asked people in my family to bring me food and they just refused. And they were ready for me to die. They didn't want to extend that. So after that, that did teach me if anyone who's dying wants anything that I'm talking to, I will go across the desert to get it for them. Whether they can eat it, whether they can't eat it, if they want it, they're going to get it.
Yeah.
And I had a friend who wanted chili that I made, and he was able to eat a cup of it. He would bit the week before he died, and he just said, "One of my last things, I want your chili," and
Oh,
you better believe he got it. And so, but I learned so many good things off of a lot of bad things. The way people treated me, the way the system treats you, the way that people are afraid to really look at hospitals and go, well, because if people realize, well, there are people died of dehydration or starvation or sleep deprivation mixture, they're afraid they'll get sued. but that's how they let patients go.
Yep.
And in my case, there were mistakes that were made, and they were afraid I would sue them. But I had my hands busy with, once I lived, going
Yeah.
after the people who attacked me. I didn't have time for the hospital. Now, and I was exhausted. So, I mean,
Yes.
it took way over a year to even think about it. So, and they only give you a year to deal with medical malpractice or anything like that, I think. But at the time, it's like, well, if you're going to file something, you have to do it within a year. And I had my hands full. So I had to go, well, without them, I would have died. Because of them, I was dying. So, you know, and then you have to also be able to prove it. And they cover their tracks.
They do.
So they cover their tracks. But there was a nursing home I saw in England that had the same, they said they caught people putting the water out of reach, the food out of reach. And they'll say, "Oh, well, we brought it to them." And I thought, "Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
We know how this goes."
Well, my
That's something
mom,
that needs. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, during COVID, when I lost my mom, um,
Yep.
I think because we were friends at that time, and I walked into her hospital room because nobody told me she was taken to a hospital. She fell, and that was their protocol at the nursing home to take her to the hospital.
The hospital.
She had been there for 10 days. She had not been fed, and she had to be fed, right? And
Yes.
they had put the trays were still stacked up in her room when I got there. They did not expect me to show up. And when I walked in the door, she looked like a death mask. And I
Of
thought,
course. Well, she was.
holy
They were
cow,
starving her.
they were starving her and she couldn't tolerate food. And so
Yeah.
we left there and went to another facility, and the lady tried to give her turnip greens. I'm like, she can't swallow that. Don't give her that.
No, and
So,
see, yeah,
it
and see
was
if I
just,
can eat. Yeah, if I can't eat solid, I mean, I even asked for a feeding tube
yeah,
and was refused. And they can get nutrients into the person, but if they're wanting that person to go ahead and pass,
yeah.
either, due to many things, then that's how they do it. And let me
It
tell you
was
what, if
very
I
effective.
ever, it's very effective. It works great. I died, you know, it worked very well for me. Um,
Yes, but you're that
but I tell
guy.
you what, oh
You
yeah,
came
but I
back.
tell you what, um, the woe be the hospital I ever walk into that anyone I know that I care for that they pull that crap with and me catch them.
Yep, yep,
You will find out, you will hear that explosion all the way in Birmingham
yep.
because, that crap. Because I know that they're usually understaffed, but you're talking about overpaid people. And they keep them overpaid, but they really need to have more people, and they need to
Well,
cut down
yes.
on what they're paying the people who are getting filthy rich on it, and pay and have it more even, and pay way to and have more workers instead of having one or two people that are working 48 hours at a time, which is unreasonable and unhealthy and dangerous. And these people are over the workers are overwhelmed,
Yes.
and there's no and they don't they should have people that come in and say, if you cannot eat, can I assist you to help you? That could be a
Well,
trainee
yes, but see,
kind of
my
thing,
mother had
and they
orders
could
for
have.
that. My
Yeah.
mother had orders for that, and it didn't happen. But
Well, then
I can't
that's
talk
to
about
me
that too
that's a
much because
problem.
I get my
Yeah,
dander up. But
I know, but I'm
mainly,
sorry, we didn't
I'm
mean to go there.
it's okay. I mean, my show is all about my guests, and that was
Yes.
a large part
Well,
of what
let's.
brought you to where you are. And
Yeah.
the fact that you came through that. One of the things that I really admire about you is that
Of
you are a great great psychic. You are someone
Thank
who
you.
has done stuff I've never seen anyone else do, and you blew my mind, not to mention Lori's. And you also write well. You travel.
Thank you.
Um, we have mutual friends. There's not a single person that does not A, enjoy you, but B, stand kind of in awe of your abilities. And
Oh, well,
that may
thank
sound
you.
extreme, but it's not.
No,
I mean, you really are the full package as far as what you do. When did you first realize that you had psychic abilities, that you could interact with the dead? I mean, what you do, there's so much. But we'll start with the psychic. When did you realize that you were a psychic? That you could communicate, that you knew
I
things you shouldn't?
knew. Well, when I was 4, I started trying to tell my mother where I was before I was born, which she being a little Baptist, that was a no-no. Her mother was
Yeah.
incredible psychic, but she was a Christian psychic. And it was different to them because that was their immediate family. Anyone outside their immediate family, they didn't consider their children, as important as their mother, their brothers, or sisters.
Hmm.
And so I had those abilities. And when I was 6, I had my first experience where I was doing psychic stuff, saying things that they were like, that's a little devil boy. And it wasn't that kind of stuff. It was just, knowing things that I had no way of knowing. And then when I was probably 8 or so, I think is when I saw my first ghost. I didn't exactly know I just knew what it was, but I knew not to. I just knew to shut up and just leave it alone. leave it. It was in
Right.
my grandparents' basement, my mother's parents, and we didn't know. I didn't know the house was haunted, but I saw it years before I encountered it when I was 16. So about 8 years before that, I'd seen it, and I thought, ooh, when you see a dead person, not a ghost, but a dead person with gooey eyes, gooey skin, broke off hair, looking out at you through a window, and then they pull back, and you kind of go, well, we just won't go down there. We won't come around this side of the house again because they didn't
I'm
want to hear from
sure.
me. And so then when I was 16, I experienced a known ghost story that they had not told me. When my grandmother died, I had to watch my grandfather, and I experienced there's a little short Civil Warish woman ghost that runs through the house, scared my grandmother to death all the time, and they thought it was her cataracts. I had no idea about it. And I saw it, and then also with her was this man. Now, the man was very malicious and frightening. And I experienced both of those, and then after that, I went,
Wow.
okay, I'm psychic, I'm into this, blah 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 blah. So then after my up and when I was 18, I got into metaphysics, and then once when I was murdered, I was 30. So when I got finished with that, I said, all right, because before then I could see things, but I didn't know what they meant. Then after my consciousness had expanded a little bit when I was dying, and since I didn't die and came back, it expanded my consciousness. So then I just started knowing intrinsically. And so then I started going, well, what you gonna do with it? And this is before the internet and all that. And, 96, I started working in metaphysical stores. And then I went, you know, I read a book called by Susan Northrop, and I went, I could do this. It was seances.
Yeah.
And I'd been doing readings since I was 18. Uh, but I hadn't done it. I was fascinated. I had a natural instinct for channeling.
Which
And
I will vouch for.
yeah, and I saw a movie that really, I went, that's what I want. to do because it was real to me, which is a terrifying ghost story called The Changeling. And there's a psychic in it who does a channeling and automatic writing. And I went, that's me, that's it. The boxes have been checked. So after I died and came back, then um, I worked on that. I started doing seancing. And in the channeling, uh, when it was time to happen, I had a friend who had a store. It was probably about 1999, 2000. And I, you're channeling if you do it the way that I do, which is it comes from your shallow, which is your solar plexus, your abdomen. And it's basically the way to put it is it'll be weird for people, but when embryos are created, we're all female. Then it become with that you get a chromosome or gene, and you become a male or female.
Right.
And so we have all the mechanisms of the male and the female in each body. And so, because if you give a woman testosterone, they will turn masculine. If you give a man estrogen, they grow female. So feminine. But we all have the mechanism of the womb. And so when you're a Chandler, you basically have that mechanism in there. And I went into um, what would you call them? Contractions. And I was about to do something was happening, and I went, oh, And I ran into my witch friend's store, and I said, close the door, call the students. I'm going to be channeling. And she did. We locked the door, and I channeled in such a way it scared the fudge out of all of them. Uh, and I was channeling this woman who had been a priestess near, before Pompeii era. And it was when different religions were going through and wiping out. There were a lot of female based religions.
Yes.
And so when the males decided, well, we don't like that, they went through and they killed all the priestesses. And so this woman had been a priestess of, kind of like a Diana ish, something like that. But they had taken her, and it was like, it would be like, I guess, wherever Pompeii is, like the water there. But they put her on a boat bow, tied her to on the boat, and burned her to death in the sun as a sacrifice to a sun god. And when I started channeling, you could see the woman superimposed over my face. There were people there who turned real white.
I'm
They were
sure.
scared I was going to eat them. And I was laying flat on the floor, and all of a sudden, and I have a bad back. I can't do this kind of thing. But it was like somebody had a board under me and flipped it, and I sprung up and landed at my friend's feet. And she was looking at me, she's saying, later she goes, I thought, oh dear. And and I
Understatement.
but
That's a good
it was
understatement.
somebody who knew her in a past life, and the spirits were trying to open up my channel, which they knew I wanted. So I went through that, scared the heck out of all of them. It opened up my channel, and so when I'm really into channeling, then if I could get people to film it, you can see
They
the
don't
mask
let
come
you.
over. Yeah, that my voice changes, the
Yes.
way I talk changes, the face changes,
The hair.
the clothing, the
The hair
hair,
changed.
everything, everything. And see the thing that well, you can the place that you got to see me channel.
Yes.
Well, when we went into that, I didn't know anything about the place or anything.
Mm-mm.
But when I came to do a little looky loo, I thought, well, I wonder if they'll let me hang out and do a little bit. I think um, uh, I think a lot of people worry that I'm going to charge them or something when I would do this stuff. So when I offer to do it, I'm just offering to do it. And so, but you were very gracious and let me stay, and I didn't expect I would be
There was
channeling.
no way I wasn't gonna have you stay. I love working with you, and that
Yeah,
was
it's fun,
so it was such a chance, such a good opportunity for us to work together,
and it was
and
fun, and it
it
was,
was fun,
and
and it was very
but
successful.
it was very successful. Well, I don't know the outcome. You haven't got to tell me all the outcome, but I know the. I didn't expect to channel, but I channeled, and then y'all got to see that, and then we
And
had an
Lori
experience.
Lori is still not over it. I'm kind of not over it. But, when you were talking about your appearance changes and,
Yeah,
when people video, that spirit would not allow video. And
yeah,
it's so rare. It's actually, I found out when I was in Scotland, I was in a place that was not a negative energy, and I still couldn't video. I had a fully charged battery that kept doing the, power drain shutdown, but it was still full. So I did that 6 times in like 10 minutes. But this one, this person was adamant that he was not going to be filmed.
yeah,
So
yeah. He,
it was
well,
interesting.
it was he didn't want to be found, and click, they just go
And
off.
also, he was so offended because you know, he said, well, yeah, I'm not black. I can't believe my picture. And I don't know if I told you this. My picture in the post office, I look black. And I was like,
Hmm?
why is your picture hanging in the post office?
I,
And
mm, yeah,
the spirit said, you don't need to know that.
yeah,
I'm like, well, I
but
know why people are hanging in the post office, you know, but it was somebody that had that history, which was why he died the way he did.
yeah. And I never did get to ask the people who live there, do they have any relief from what was happening?
Well, they were friends of mine from the dog park,
Yeah,
and their dog Bo would not get out of the truck at that house.
mm, I don't
And
blame him.
yeah, right. And since you left, Bo goes there all the time.
Well, and on that same property, there was another haunting,
Another dog.
and there was their dog. It was just this person, this spirit was very hateful to
Mm-hmm.
animals, and it was torturing that dog.
Mm-hmm.
And the dog was on death's door anyway when we walked in. And when I was cleansing the house and doing my thing, and then all of a sudden the dog, when I was closing the spot where the
Yeah.
spirit comes in the house, the dog got up, came in there, acted like, wagging its
A
tail,
puppy.
and it's like, and it like a puppy, and because it knew it was going. Because it
Yes.
was a scary spirit. It was
It
one of
was a
those
scary
that
spirit.
it was hateful to women, hateful to. It was on the run when he got killed anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and he was criminal. He really needed to. He would have been one of us that would have been hung, if they had caught him.
Yes.
But when he got killed, he just found a place to go to. He was looking for someone knew,
Yeah, because
and
the
he just
people
stayed
that
there.
lived in that house were his
Yeah,
friends, and they were hookers.
they were
And
hookers at
and
that time,
but
and
those
back
were
in the
his
1800s.
friends, ladies of the
Yeah,
evening. But that was his safe place. That was the only place he could think to go, and they
yeah,
weren't there.
nope. And his
They had
spirit
left.
just stayed there, and in a long time.
Yeah.
And so, but that was an interesting experience. I mean, I know y'all had a good time, but
Well, it was
it's
so educational. And that's why, because we're friends, and I never try to BS you because there's no reason to try to BS you because it's not going to
no,
take. But
no.
plus I'm not a very good BSer. But
Well,
one of the things that I was so taken with was the fact that my friend called me. messaged me on
Mm,
Facebook and got in touch with me and said, I have this situation. And I said, well, my friend Lori's going to be coming down. Yeah, I'll get with my friend Mark and we'll see if we can come over and check it out. And I mean, it was, I knew this dog. This dog had been one, my dog Heidi, who passed away. This was my dog Heidi's best friend.
yeah.
Or, yeah, dog park friends. That gets tight, right? And it was so interesting because he reached out because of Bo, his dog,
Yeah.
and that that meant to me that he was really concerned about what was there, and
Yeah.
and it was killing that other dog
Yes. And it hated dogs.
because they were
It was trying to, yeah. Well, they could see him,
well,
and
yes,
then
and he had had dogs sicked on him before
and yes,
when he was on the
he had been
run.
attacked. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd forgotten that. I forgot that.
yeah,
Because I forget a lot of stuff when I'm channeling.
sure.
But yeah, he had at one time when he had been basically a prisoner or somewhere and was
Hmm.
trying to get away, and they sicked the dogs on him. He hated dogs, so he was attacking the dogs.
Yep.
And that poor other one at the other house, I just felt so sorry for her. And before we left, she was much better because
She
she
was
was,
thrilled, and
yeah,
and she went and laid under that, beside that bed where you said that
yep,
he was. She went and laid on the spot where he had been, like she
yep,
was reclaiming her house
yeah,
and her people.
and their people, and
Yeah.
uh, and that's a part of, it's very rare that something can make someone sick or or kill things, but they can kill things by draining them of
Hmm.
energy, of their iron, of their, give you make you have leukemia, make you have any kind of thing, and so it's just a malignancy.
Yes.
And so when you get it out, then you have to really replenish everything that you've lost because of it, because they're parasitic. That one was parasitic, and he had found a way to eat,
Yes.
and that's just how he ate. But he hated dogs. He was mean to those dogs. And let me tell you what: if I go in a place where there's a spirit mean to dogs or children, it will be out of that house before I leave that house.
Yep.
And if I don't get to get it out that time, I will be back. And they don't like it when I come back because I will make them out of that house because I know people who deal with them, they think every spirit is held to the constructs of Christianity and Catholicism, and it's like a lot of them are not. And that's why if you try and do an exorcism and it pisses them off or makes them mad, excuse my language,
We'll let you
um,
slide.
they just, well, they'll defend themselves, or they'll hide until the people are gone, and then they'll just come back.
Right.
And but it can make a system worse if you're not careful. And when I deal with cleansing, I deal with them. They're an energy. I'm an energy. I have to use my energy to create a boundary and then push them out, and make like an electric fence around the property and push them out so they can't get back. And I've not had any problem with that. The only time I've had problems with it is when the people living in the house bring them back in.
Let them back in.
Because
Yes.
there was one house in Chattanooga, in a very rich section, beautiful, beautiful house, beautiful. And this girl it was just, this thing was trying to infect her husband. It was causing her, it was just eating everything. But you could see it, it would come and stand by the bed and try and scare them. And I went into the house, and you could hear it calling from the basement, going, "Come on down." Like, what you gonna do? And I went through, and I went with a Wiccan priest I knew at that time. and we exercised it, got it out, got it pushed out. And then the husband, before they got a divorce because they had just been through too much. And before he left, he wanted his new girlfriend to see the ghost. And so it's not a ghost, really. It was more of it was a little bit more than your typical ghost. And they kind of opened the door again and then walked off. But I think too he was mad he was having to leave the house, sell the house.
Right.
So I think in revenge, he kind of opened it back up. And very unhealthy, very scary, very creepy thing. And I thought, ugh. But I've had really good success at clearing houses and stuff. And then, but you sometimes if you try religious things to it and it doesn't adhere to what you're saying, then you have to deal with it as energy. And
Hmm.
and that's really what I am at this point is an energy technician, metaphysician.
Yes.
Um, but some of the things and the tools I have, I got through a way I don't know how to teach. I mean, I know how to teach people to get to the levels where you can learn these things, but it's up to you. Each individual is so different, and it has to be important to you. And this stuff is
Yes.
apparently very important to me because that's why it opened up for me. But I had to go through a major transition to be able to get that. So it's not just a talent you get like drawing. You have to have the basics talent for it, but you really, you can develop skills and talent and techniques, but you also have to have a discipline. And that's a very difficult thing in the ADHD world we live in.
Yes. Yes, it
So,
is.
and a lot of people get into learning metaphysics, getting into magic, getting into ritual, getting into stuff because they want to make themselves powerful,
Yes.
empower themselves. Well, if you aren't empowered with your confidence and your self esteem is in the right place, magic and stuff like that isn't going to make you a powerful person. What it is, it makes you when you work in metaphysics, you're a social worker. And the abilities you have to understand those. But if you're getting into things to just scare people, show people, be brag, say, oh, I can do this, blah, 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 then
Yes.
it will bite you every time. Because if the ego begins or gets in the way, that's what eats you. And, so I understand who I am, what I can do. I understand it. But I'm also humble about it because, I can't take credit for all of it. And I'm just glad that they allow me to do what I can do. Uh, and the more I can do, the more I enjoy. So, I
Yes.
mean, I just did a thing right now that when it comes out, I'm so excited for it.
I know you
But
are.
I'm so excited, but because it's very important to me as a victim of violent crime and having friends who have died as victims of violent crime. Uh, I'm very big about helping the deceased or finding bodies and stuff. And there was a circumstance I didn't know it was going to turn into what it did, but it turned into it's turning into an incredible story for me. It's not mine to tell right yet, but I was needed to help find an old lost cemetery, and I started doing my remote viewing and drawing my maps. And there's a spirit
Yeah.
that showed up that they know who it is, that had been on the property, and she showed me where they were. And then they went looking and they found them, and they've been looking for years. And I took them right to them apparently, and over 100 graves, mass graves, grave graves, a lot of it. So that's what I like my work to be. That's what I want to do. And so when that happens, then you feel like, because it's so many spirits there had been wanting to be found and to be recognized. And this person who's doing it, that's spearheading it, is an incredible person. They're just very sweet, very good. And but they've been very tenacious, and they got help to come and do this. They actually the people, they contacted someone to use a device now to be able to do, ground scanning.
Like the LiDAR?
And well, and I mean, I don't know what you call it, but they did scanning. I don't want to tell too much, but
It's okay.
but before they went in, I said, tell them first, use a little dowsing rod, and
Let
you'll
them
start, and
know.
I taught them how to do it. And I said, get a dowsing rod, use it first. They did. They were able to find the start of the bodies with the dowsing rod. Then the person took the electronic thing, and it's huge. It's a
Yes.
huge thing, and it's the kind of work I want to do. I want to do helping people looking for their missing people. I want to help people looking for answers for what happened, or we don't know what happened. See if we and I'm
Yes.
trying to get to that. I think but also as a technician, you have to also remember. Well, first of all, I'm disabled physically, so I have to. The thing with psychics, they do and 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 they do. You have to. It's like working a muscle. You have to do some, stop some, do some, rest some, because your body, your techniques, and your tools are your body. That's what killed Edgar Casey. He just couldn't stop. He felt like he couldn't
Yes.
stop in the helping, but but sometimes you have to take breaks. And then if you're dead, those talents, that's, you have to, but then again, you have so many people wanting, but you have to do it you have to be reasonable.
Like your
There's
friends
a
that say, "What is here? What is here?" Yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's all the time, and that's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
When I was young, people would only invite me to parties just to as a party favor, and now I'm like, that's
Well,
fine. You know,
you are delightful, but
well, I mean, to
people
do the
should want to
psychic
just hang with
stuff,
you.
but they do, but it took a while for me to go. Okay, that's now that I'm older, it's like it's just fine. But one of the psychics I really love today is Tyler Henry. Extraordinary young man, and a lot of people don't, unless they watch his shows a lot. He has physical issues,
Hmm.
and very sweet, very humble, really on it. But he also has a lot of physical problems, and I've found a lot of times that psychics that are have physical problems or disabled, or that in the old days, cultures and tribes, if you had a disabled child, they either became the shaman or you killed them.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they would be the shaman, because it overcompensates, and you have the other aspect. So I find that when something happens to me, it may increase my pain thing or whatever, but you know, but I mean, you fall and hit your
Level that
head,
up.
you get up, and you're better. At doing this.
Yeah.
You may stink everywhere. You may hurt like crazy having to open that casket in the morning and closing it at night. But but it's so. But like me, anytime something happens to me, it just seems to make the talents a little bit more open. So if that's what they have to do to make it work, that's what happens. But you have to
Well,
pace yourself.
and I think that you are very good at setting boundaries. Um, I feel
Yeah.
like you are. I don't know that it's all that easy to do, but I feel like you have found a way to do that. And I'm sorry, excuse me a moment. But That's really not me breathing, and you know,
It's a doggy.
it's the dog. This I do rescue dogs all the time. This one was a true rescue,
Oh,
and he is trying very hard to learn how to just be an inside person.
yeah.
And yeah, don't eat it.
Yeah.
So, and one of the things I have found with the rescues that I do is that their energy is in direct proportion to what you're putting into them.
Yeah.
And so when we first met him, and this is something that is my gift, and I'm sorry
Yep.
to don't know.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I had to do my stern mom face. But it's so funny because this dog was tripping when we met. And I just got down on his level and I'm like, I'm safe. I am a safe place.
Yeah.
And from that point on, it's like an imprint, right? This dog
Oh,
has
it is
imprinted
an
on
imprint.
me. And it's just like, hey, it's never boring. And the reason that he's in this room is because were he not in this room, we would not be able to do anything anyway,
Yeah.
because he would be struggling to get into this room. And
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that kind of I'm so glad we're friends.
It's okay.
And I apologize for the loud
It's
dog.
okay.
He just starts panting in
Oh
his
no, and
sleep.
oh, it's all right. He ain't being a bother.
Well,
No
and
problem.
he is such a charmer. Kind of like you. But
Uh,
like, it's just like, oh, but look, I'm really cool and I really have all this, this love and everything else to hand out, and makes it a little bit worthwhile, right? But I didn't want to distract quite as much as I had to, and I apologize for that.
oh, you're
Now,
fine. You're fine. What do you? I mean, you are fine. We're having a good time.
but the thing that I think amazed me is the fact that when I told you that this was, you know, the channeling experience that we shared together, I told you that this was affecting an animal, a friend of mine's animal. I didn't know necessarily so much about the other dog. I was aware, but I didn't know it was that bad.
Hmm.
And, but I knew that if Bo would not get out of the truck to go into the house with David, that there was something really major affecting that, because otherwise he would have been protecting David from what was in the house. And he was too afraid to.
Well,
So
yeah. And if
it
people could
just
have
was,
seen what that energy was, yeah. No, no, no. You know,
yeah, I'm glad
it
that
would
I
have
couldn't.
scary.
I'm glad I could not, because one of the things that I have done, and it has served me well, okay, because I do have a certain skill set, but nowhere near you. But I have actively said, I do not want to see death states.
No.
I don't necessarily want to see anything. I'm I'm familiar and I get it, but I definitely do not want to see a death state. And so far so good, because
Good, because it's
putting that
it's
out
it.
there,
ca- it's actually when it happens, it's so in the moment that it's usually later that I go ew. You know,
I can't believe
because
you
I
actually
can't.
go, ooh.
Ew, I have. A couple of times I went, ew, that's in their house. Ew.
Yeah.
Or I mean, I've lived in a couple of places that I've been like, no, 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 you're getting out of here. Um,
Yes. I had to do that here.
because there were, strange and bizarre things. But yeah, but when you see someone who, and what they're projecting is how they see themselves. And if they're
Yes.
still living in the deceased body, that's how they're seeing themselves because that's where they don't want to move on and they were holding on to life, and well, that's where life is. They died. So that's, and then if they take on the aspects of what they look like when they died, they can be very scary. And if
Yes.
it's a darker, creepier, and if the electronics go crazy while we're talking this, that's why. But the stuff from what I call the oozy energy around
Yeah.
this, the energy that's starting to seep down into the earth, um, they're pretty damn scary.
Yes.
But as a psychic, I can't be afraid of anything like that,
No.
you know. But I have been grossed out by a few just because of the smells, or I
Well,
accidentally kicked a spirit one time, and they were really just like a skin suit over a skeleton, and I kicked it, and I could feel the skin go whap, and then it shocked the spirit, and they disappeared. And I went, "Ooh, sorry." But I felt the clammy clay skin, but it was like there was nothing inside. But they were seeing themselves as they were as dead, and so their dead self is decomposed. So that's
right.
what they were holding. So, but you can't. But a lot of times I'll see that stuff, and then later on I'll go, "What was that?" Or I
Yeah.
don't. I can't always go, "That's scary," looking. I have to deal with it. And if you see it, you'll see what I mean. And then also, I've loved the ghosts. I've had one or two times. I've had one time where when I worked in a store, person walked in, they were so solid. I can still see them now, and it's been 30 years. But
Really?
they were so solid. And they just walked in the store I was in and went looking around and bent down to look at jewelry around the corner and disappeared. And I
Well,
mean,
what
hmm,
brought that in?
what brought that in? Well, I mean, our store, the lady who owned the store, her son had died dramatically. And so she had a store that backed up to the cemetery he was buried in.
Okay.
And I was working in the metaphysical store, and one day this very nice looking man, very tall, blonde, curly, kind of sun in. I don't know if people now would know what sun in is,
I
but
know what it is.
I do too. I used to use it, and
Yes.
I didn't realize until later. I went, oh, because you could tell he had his hair sun in, had sun in his hair. He had dark siders, which I hadn't seen a dark sider in years, but he
Yeah.
looked so current as far as like it was just him. And this was in 99, 1997, 99, somewhere in there. And he walked in the door and looked around. I said, if you need some help, let me know. And he goes, I'm just looking. And he went around and crouched down. I mean, taller than I am, and I was 6'2". And 10 or 15 minutes went by. There wasn't any way you would have to go past me to get through the door. And the back door was locked from the inside and everything. And there was a bathroom and then there was a storeroom. And after 15 minutes or so, I got up to go see if he needed help or if he wanted to see something. And he was just gone. He wasn't there. And after about 10 or 15 minutes of just really trying to figure it out, and I went, oh, and it was just somebody from the cemetery who had walked in, and he was dressed like we used to dress as the preppy look in the
Yeah.
70s. And I went, oh, oh. And he looked like we used to look, which is with the sun in the hair, and he
Yeah.
had except
Well, and the dark
not as
siders.
good.
Yeah.
He looked great, the dark setters and the khaki. He had a certain type of shirt that I remember that they kind of quit making about 1984.
Yeah.
Um, and I went, oh, well, that was cool.
That was
And
cool.
but I mean, as much as like you're seeing me right now, that's how solid. He just walked in and was in the store. And then I started going, okay, did he open the door or what? And what had happened was when he came in, I was doing some work on the computer. So I assumed he came in the door, but all of a sudden
Right.
he was there. And so I think he just came in to look at the store on his way back home. And I wish I would see more like that because that was fascinating. Because he was talking to me, solid, you know, good
Yeah.
looking, 1970s, suntanned, preppy, coming in to see what we had, wanted to look at the rings.
That is
And
so
so,
interesting.
yeah, and I didn't realize it until all that happened. And I went, you saw a ghost, but,
Trippy
I didn't
dippy.
know they could be, I didn't know that they could be that solid. But the stories from Japan after a tsunami, and people I know
Yes.
have told this before, but it's worth telling again because I like it.
I like it
But
too.
but after a tsunami, there was sections of town that are just ruined, and people were getting into taxis and then disappearing.
Yeah.
And one girl got into a cab and gave him the directions. He went, "Are you sure? There's nothing down there." And she said, "Did I die?" And then she disappeared.
Yeah.
And I went, "Ooh, chills." And
Is that something? I'm sorry,
go ahead.
but I have heard numerous people share with me that until they know they're dead, they just keep living. Is that
Sometimes,
accurate?
well, it's kind of complex because mostly when you start to die, you start to go through the death process and they call to you. And if you go through that, you go into the universal consciousness, you go through the tunnel, and then you process. Now, some people's souls go on because the soul is separate than the spirit, the person you created. Sometimes your spirit or soul can continue on this side of the consciousness. And then sometimes the personality can continue, which the personality is just such a driven thing. If it has, if it's a consciousness unto itself, so it can be the soul and the spirit and the personality, or sometimes it can be the personality separately that can be doing. And there's some of them that try to live their life that isn't here anymore, and then some of them just don't know to go on. They don't know what to do because they're like, I have things to do. I can't, and they just exist. Their system just acts automatically and feeds them. Uh, but they don't realize they're dead sometimes. But when I was dying, I knew I was dying.
Right.
Some people don't realize it. Some people just they know. Well, I watched a very dramatic reincarnation thing the other day, and it was so dramatic. And the child just remembered, they didn't hurt, but they remembered, dying in a very tragic incident. And they were reborn into this little boy, and he was having a lot of conflicts because he hadn't dealt with being dead, you know. And and that's part of our thing too. We when we die, we have to go. All right, I have to let this go because this is the game I came and played. I played it, did my touchdown, whatever. And now it's time to go back. And some
Right.
people, because of free will, you don't have to, uh, but it's better if you do. But then again, if there's murders and things like that, or unresolved issues, they can, they can. I mean, it's just it's different for each person, and there are just some people when they were dying. I've known a couple of people when they were dying. The last thing they said was, I'm not ready to go," and you can keep yourself from going, but the thing is your energy, so you have to do something. And because of the energy system, if you're an energy, you'll find a way to eat.
Right.
Um, if you don't find a way to eat, what happens is their plasma begins to get thicker, and as they get older and heavier, and they don't get enough to eat, or they don't find a way to function properly, then their system will become the plasma gets thicker and heavier, and then it gets kind of caught up in the um, heavier energy that's around us, and then eventually they get recycled basically, and their energy gets pulled back up through the system, and then they get to the consciousness, but it takes a while. That's why in England, and places like that, you'll have hauntings that go for hundreds of years.
Yes.
Well, here we haven't had hundreds of years to practice that. Um, but you don't hear of them as often here, going
Well,
hundreds of years.
if you go out into the far west,
Hmm.
you know, the southwest,
Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff there that is ancient. It's kind of like when you're looking at the ruins and the mesas and the practitioners that were on the mesas. Um, there's a lot of history there. And if you
yeah,
go down into South America, then Central and South America, then also there is a lot of ancient stuff there.
yeah,
As far as humans from across the sea who migrated here,
yeah.
up around America Stonehenge up in New Hampshire, there is stuff there that they believe is from the Viking era, and they're still documenting that. It's not conclusive yet. But then, as far as our ancestors coming here, you know, those that weren't already Native Americans here, um, that's only been since the late 1500s.
Yeah,
So that's as old as we go with that,
that's yeah.
with the
As far
society
as
that
we
we have now.
yeah. Now
And
the mound builders
we
in
have,
near
mhm,
Chattanooga, the mound builders.
yes,
Now those energies, they do. I do take it back. That those because in Chickamauga Battlefield, before
yes.
it was the battlefield, there were mound builder energies there, and
Well, we have them here on the
ancient.
Black Warrior River,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
outside of Tuscaloosa. We have
Yeah.
Moundville.
So I mean, we have that, but we have older spirits. Um, but like in Europe, I mean, there are towns that are
Oh my gosh, yes,
thousands of years old, and the Roman streets, um, and here we're just now getting past two, and we're almost heading towards 300, I think. So. Uh, we're getting there where we could have some ghosts that would go for several centuries now.
right.
But a lot of them don't. I mean, they go until their energy breaks down and they just don't understand how to feed themselves. If they understand how to feed themselves, they can go on indefinitely. And if they don't know how to feed themselves, eventually they will just kind of break down, get reabsorbed, and then magnetically pulled into the consciousness. So they do get reprocessed back to it. It's just that when you die, it's best to just go through the system and get on with it, But
So I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Well, when you say processed and get back to the system,
Yeah.
um, just like go ahead and be willing to move on and go into like the collective consciousness kind of a thing.
Well, we
Is
come
that
from the collective consciousness.
right?
This is my opinion. We come from the collective consciousness. When we die, we go back to the consciousness. Um, And as a person, when you come from the consciousness, if there's something you need to conquer or you need to try that you haven't tried, because they want the one thing that the consciousness doesn't have is the physical enactments we do.
Hmm.
And so it's like sending, a football a player out to play a game. You send them out and say, "Go do your best." And then when you come back, what did you learn? And then what they learned, what they recorded in their brain, gets absorbed into the consciousness and it learns from it. That's part of the self-regulatory system.
Okay.
And so it's like, so we go back into the consciousness, come out of the consciousness, go back to the consciousness. We have, you can be reincarnated, you can be not reincarnated. If when you're done with it, you can go and be a guide, or you can go do something else. There are other things to do, but if you're in the main system of being trying to conquer things like we want to learn, you go to
Hmm.
school to learn, and it's a challenge for us to go through life and be thrown everything thrown at you
Right.
and learn to rise above it if you can. If you can't, then what did you learn from not rising above it? What did you learn from being a petty person? What did you learn from being a moral person? What did you learn from being the victimizer? What did you learn from being the victim? And so, and being survivors, basically. So energy doesn't die, so it never does die. Our physical self may die, but we think it's dead, but it transitions like everything else at some point. And one of the harder things in the world to keep in preservation is the physical body after quote unquote clinical death because it
Right.
wants to return back into dirt. And it will at some point. And when they go, they'll find mummies and go, "Oh, it's in great shape." I'm like, "For what?
For what?
What? That
Exactly.
doesn't
It's
look
like,
like
oh,
that.
no,
That
I
looks
am
pretty bad." And they go, "Well, it looks
pretty,
great." And
pretty good for 1,400 years of death. Yeah.
yeah, and there's been a few that they have been able to sustain, but they have to use tricks to do it, like Lennon's
Yes.
body. It's made out
Yes.
of wax by this point.
Mhm.
But our body has wants to return back into minerals and then recycle. Everything recycles. We recycle. Our consciousness recycles. And what we come from, the planets are recycled. I mean, when a planet dies, it gets a black hole. What happens with the black hole? It makes a tube that will go in until it's the energy of the planet trying to find to rebirth, and it will go
Yes.
until it hits a nebula, gets that gases, starts all over. And same thing when we die, we doing the same thing. The energy, our body may be stopped, but the energy is cycling and
Yes.
continuing. So it makes a little black hole that goes to where it's magnetized to. And so we all come from that. And so it's all magnetism and trails and cords and fiber optic threads almost. And we're just, if it's continual recycling. And a lot of people believe when you die, you just lay in the grave until Jesus comes back. And, energy doesn't, in my opinion, energy doesn't sleep. It doesn't, it's called energy.
Well,
So,
yeah. I think
and
that your
that's,
body may be there.
yeah,
I,
your
I,
body may be there, but your body's alive too
yeah.
because it's full of bacteria and programs. I mean, your body has it set up to go, all right, he's dying. Now let's start doing this because it's not.
Yes.
And when a planet dies, it's not really dead. It's just um, the energy from it goes into the black hole and goes into
Yes.
the tube, and it's the same thing as spirits do. We're replicating what the universe does.
Well, because that's part of the whole collective
Yeah.
consciousness.
Yes.
You know,
Part of the
all
board.
of the energy is.
Yeah.
And I have to ask you, and we have talked about this a little bit, but not very much.
Uh-huh.
And part of it, I don't remember what we said. We
Okay.
talk about so much stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But
I know it.
UFOs,
Uh-huh.
extraterrestrial beings.
Yes.
If you go ahead because you were started to say something.
um, I've seen UFOs. I've seen some really weird ones that now I feel like because when I saw a teardrop one,
Yeah.
when I've seen a cigar shaped one, I thought, why are they built like that? Now that I understand black holes, now that I understand um, connecting tubes and things like that, like dendrites and things,
Yeah.
I went, oh well, they're curved because they're magnetic and they just, there are tubes in the universe that there are black holes, and then there are black holes that pull in,
Yes.
and then there are black holes that are just funnels of energy, so that
Well, it's a
shoot
yin and
out.
yang, right?
Yeah, so if you have a machine that you want to get down one of these, if you understand a map and can see these things, you get in the right one, you can travel light years, in a vehicle that's shaped like a teardrop because it's curved and it's dynamic,
Aerodynamically
aerodynamic.
correct. Yeah.
So, and two, to me, one reason we have connections to the others, the people out there, ancient people, and when we call them aliens, we really should call them travelers.
Yes.
But in my opinion, because they are, they're not. We're not all dissimilar. We're all different, but we all have something connecting. But one reason we have connections to them, of course, the Earth is the planet is an organ within the
Yes.
consciousness. This is an organ. This is a organ that produces energy, oxygen, water. You know, it has its own system. So in each universe, there are planets like this. Somewhere that we haven't found them yet, but they exist.
Yeah.
And when the Earth is created through black holes and things like this, they hit nebulas, and so our chakras are
Yes.
elements that came from those different nebulas.
Yes.
And so if you look at the color of the chakra, you can look out and see what kind of nebula that comes from, and then you can see what it's made out of. Is it made out of hydrogen? Is that what makes it red? Is it green because it has nitrogen? Guess what? We have hydrogen and nitrogen in us. But in our electrical system, we have the colors of the chakras. Well, that's part of our connection to those people out there.
Yes.
That kind of represents what universes are in our collective. And when I've looked at the Voynich manuscripts and I've been looking at that, um, I understand a little more every time I look at it.
What are the
Um,
Voynich manuscripts?
I don't know how to describe it. I think they think it's from like the 11th century or something like that. It's really more of a, I don't even know how to explain it, but you'll have to look up the Voynich manuscript, but they can't decipher it. And it has drawings that are just freaky. But when I look at it, I've seen some that I go, well, that's the consciousness. They're drawing things on a microscopic basis, and this version of this book was done, I think, in the 1500s, something like that. But they can't decipher it language wise. And it has plants and stuff, but it also has a lot of stuff describing things that I look at visually, it has, when we've talked before about axon terminals and things like that, and neurons and axon terminals, they have drawings of myelin sheaths
Yes. Oh my
that
gosh. I remember you
and
teaching
pine
me
cones.
this.
Yes, yes. And the pine cones, which is the pineal gland, and they
Yes.
show how that these 7 or 8 spirits, it's how the guides get into our system. But
Yes.
how they connect to us is through another, it's like they draw it like a spine, but really what they're doing is it's coming from, and they're in a green pool. Well, that green pool is nitrate. But when you start to die, you start to see that greenish yellow light, which is from the
Yes.
nitrates. And in the neurons, and it shows that those guides, those 7 representatives of the 7 universes or planets that we have their gases and their understanding. When you have their gases, that means you have some of their understanding, some of their consciousness. And so there's 7, at least minimum, guides, people from other places, mostly feminine, that access us. When we as spirits, we come in through the solar plexus, and then we enter the body of the baby, and with our little cord through the umbilical cord, and da da da. And then they work out of the soul neuron, and it shows it directly how they're connected to us. How, I mean, to the pine cone, which is our pineal gland, how they connect from our pine cone, our pineal gland, through the womb in to where they come from. Well, the greenish light comes from is the consciousness.
Okay.
So it's from the neurons of the consciousness. Because when you get into the consciousness and you get out the little tunnel that you've been going through and you look out, you see a lot of neurons. Well, and you see a lot of greens and blues and all the colors that you see in the like the nebulas
Yes.
and gases. Um, so they come from the consciousness from that. What it is when the spirits are coming close. The consciousness is a big brain kind of structure. You
Hmm.
wouldn't recognize it as one because we're in the forest. We can't see the trees because we're in the forest.
Right.
But the green that they see, it's like in the consciousness, it's a mesh made out of all the energies that create the plasmas and the nebulas, everything. And but there are like lobes close to whatever functioning planet there is. So the greenish yellow light is something made from not. It's one of the neuron colors, one of the nebulous colors that is made out of the nitrates. And so those spirits come through that lobe, that yellowish greenish lobe, come through the dendrites, come and help you through your life, connect you into your body, push your spirit into the pineal gland. They watch over you. Then when you die and go back, you cleanse off, and they go, "All right, we learned that. We got that information. Next." You know, and trillions of times. Yeah,
Yeah.
every year, millions of times. And but the Voynich manuscript, if you look at it, it's amazing. But
It
I'm starting
is.
to understand some of it. Some of it's way beyond my pay grade, but
Well, it's so beautiful.
oh yeah, but the
That's one of the
one,
things. And for those listening, Mark and I have had this conversation before because I was concerned about a physical thing going on. And he said, "Well, let me show you." And so, what was funny was that I guess, Mark, about 6 months later was when I came to you and said, I'm having this happen. And you're like, oh, well, you need to get this. And I'm like, okay. And so when I ordered the product and I came back, the myelin sheath was
yep,
what was in the book, was in the manuscript.
It's in the
because it's
book,
not a book, it's a
and that
manuscript.
well,
And that
manuscript,
was so
and
bizarre.
and
To me, it was bizarre.
it's yes, and a lot of it I'm doing a book with all of us in it, so I can't tell a whole lot about it. But the myelin sheath, you have to see it with a microscope. We're talking about a medievalish kind
Yes,
of manuscript that's telling things on a microscopic symbolic energy format
yes,
that is kind of amazing. And then there's a layout in there that I just love, which is the consciousness.
yeah,
And it shows specific buildings and things like, like there's constructs in each one. And I went, well, that's the like showing because what happens with the consciousness, it's lots and lots and lots of neurons, and when you die, then eventually you go to whatever neuron people, whatever wherever you're drawn magnetically. And but these older consciousnesses from elsewhere have been doing it so long that they understand how to do it like a computer, and so there are constructs in those neurons, and so it's a map of a certain portion of that neuron pattern.
yeah.
And so it's the way I look at it. And every time I look at it, I go, oh, I've seen that. But what they're doing in it is symbolically. But everything they're showing, like, the wombs with green fluid, that's not exactly green fluid. That's the the you have a green chakra. That's the because of um the the functioning of the brain. Our brain has all sorts of colors in it. That brain has a lot of colors and nebula and gas in it and chemicals, and it's just part of that. But each chakra you have is representative of that's from the stars. That's where we get our star dust basically. is
Starseed.
it was it's reincarnated and connected because one planet reincarnated into another one, and this planet is reincarnated from another one. After this one dies, it'll reincarnate into another one, and whatever energy was in this one will go to the next one. It will reincarnate. So we are from reincarnated planets that have developed this brain that learns because of us. It sends us to learn what we're doing in this portion. And the people that come from other places, the UFOs and stuff, what they're coming for is by checking the chakras on people, they can see the development and level of our consciousness. They take samples from each, like I forgot what you call that, but case studies. They'll
Hmm.
go across the world, take samples from each place and see they have devices to be able to check your consciousness because it's an electrical system, and we don't think of it that way, but it is. And so they can check our level of consciousness and development, and as long as we don't get to a certain point, then they don't have to deal with us. Um, because right now we're still primitive. And even though I just was writing a thing yesterday, even though we can go out, shoot ourselves out into space, it doesn't necessarily mean we need to be there. It doesn't mean we need to go and muck up other people's stuff because we've mucked up our stuff. We haven't learned how to deal with race and sexuality and differences of opinion. If you're the religious aspect, where if somebody doesn't believe the way you believe, that you want to blow a hole through them and think that's okay and sweet and kind in the name of God. Um, so and it doesn't mean they're better. It just means they're older and more developed, but they don't really want us, the toddlers, coming and causing trouble for them either. So, and
Well,
they
there's a
have to
reason
keep
that
the.
there's a children's table at Christmas.
That's right. And
So,
they are more interested in our radiation levels, in our consciousness levels, and in keeping the planet from dying. Because then when the planet dies, then it has to go and reincarnate, which takes, a long time. And this is an organ, but it's also a halfway in between for somewhere else for them. So they have to keep it in working order. It's producing stuff for whatever this organ represents in the consciousness. It's important to them, and it's a halfway place. They can come back and forth to it. So they're not as interested in us because we think we're so important and so smart, but um, these people are way ahead of us. I was thinking, you know, we don't know how to cure AIDS. We don't know how to cure cancer, and even if they're closer to curing cancer, but even if they could, they probably wouldn't because of the money they make from it. But can't cure the common cold, can't cure herpes, can't cure things like that. Can't really can tell me all day long. We know how they build a pyramid. Go build it. Let me see you. Let me see you get 100 and something feet off the ground with no electric anything and pick up a 10-ton rock. Let me see you do it.
and get it all the way
Uh,
up to the top
and
to the
and make it
steps.
so nicely cut that you can't put a piece of hair or paper in between it.
Yep.
The smell of horse manure is pretty heavy.
It's so strong.
Um, it's
Yes.
so strong. And so when people go, when I'm talking about stuff, I'm talking about, and there are people who think they're scientifically minded going, no, 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 that's stupid. No, science doesn't prove it. Well, science doesn't prove everything. Science is young. We are old. This is
Yes.
human experience. But the problem with being old people, we still are primitive. And there are people wanting to bring about Armageddon, and there are people wanting to
Yes.
destroy and acting like it's a positive thing in their belief system. And it's something that, they had the same thing going. And they know exactly what nuclear war does. They know exactly what it does. That's why they come and shut it down as much as possible. And they check our radiation levels for that. Because if we kill this planet, it's not so convenient for them either.
Yes.
It's not about that, oh, we want to talk to you because you're so smart and so pretty. When they
Unless you're
came
alone.
here, yeah, the Anunnaki, so, the Sumerians said the Anunnaki gave them magic and makeup and mirrors because we were ugly. And
That's
that,
funny.
and that, and that
And
they thought
and
we
the
were.
tricorder pouch from Star Wars. I mean, from
Yeah,
Star Trek. I mean,
yeah,
there's there's so much stuff that people have knocked off from the Anunnaki's appearance. It's just crazy. And
it's
then
crazy.
and then yeah, I think that some people get downloads to be able to go
Yes,
out and do this stuff. And I tell you one thing, I would love to have sat down with Gene Roddenberry
yeah,
because he got downloads all the time. I
yeah,
would love to be able to sit down with Elon Musk and
yeah.
just say, "So where did this
Well,
come from?"
I'm not so
you
thrilled
know,
by him. I mean, everybody
I
else
think,
is, but I have this. I'm like he's the Anunnaki of the future.
yeah,
And, he's brilliant, got all this stuff, but here's something for me
yeah.
personally.
Well, I mean,
But see,
I don't know enough about him to have a personal opinion about him, except
I
for his
don't
freaking
either.
brain.
But I know when it's like, he's an
Yeah.
Anunnaki of the future. Not that, that's bad. That just means that, even in their culture, in the Anunnaki, and the
Yes.
Anunnaki were just one people that
Yes.
from another place. They were from a planet coming here to get stuff because they had to.
Yes.
They weren't coming to get it because of the riches. They came to get the gold because they needed it to get sunlight
And
to their
yes.
and building satellites and doing all that. And but they have the process of we're gods, you're
Not
not.
You're not.
and you're not.
Yes.
And when they talk about going to Mars and we're going to be rich people and you're going to be our workers, guess what happens when you get off the planet?
Yeah.
The workers are going to be the workers, and that's going to be it. You're going to be working yourself until you're dead, and the rich people are going to be sitting there going, "Well, the reason that the Anunnaki story happens is where they had to tinker with people that were
Yeah.
here. They didn't create people, but they took what
No,
was here and changed it in the
they did.
mythology. Was because they were too damn lazy to do it themselves.
Well, they were
They
beyond
were
that.
gods. They were gods.
They were
And the
gods.
people that they
And
brought were from a place where the gravity was horrible for their
yes.
bodies, and they had to rebel. And then they got demonized because they wouldn't put up with it.
Yeah.
And and then they had to go, well, we'll have to go. They turned to their female scientist and said, do something. And she did something.
Yeah.
And guess what? you know, if you want to see what they did, look very closely. Um, look in the mirror.
Look in the
But
mirror. Pay no
and it,
attention to the
go ahead.
cur- pay no attention to the man behind the curtain.
No,
So
no.
yeah.
But but they may have the same. We don't really need to interact with aliens right now. With the travelers because they may still have that. Oh, how but can you
Yes.
plow? Can you work? What can you do for us?
Yeah.
Because if we go somewhere, land on it, and find anyone we can maneuver around, guess what? There's going to be a faction of people. It's the same thing here now. You have
It
people who
is.
have empathy. You have people who have no empathy. You have people who are like, I like being rich and in power, and you like to be bullied. So, let's do this.
Yeah.
And so it's not always to our benefit to think, well, we really want to talk to these people.
And yet
Do we have?
everybody, I mean, I'm sorry. I do
Go ahead.
ufology. I go to all the conferences and stuff, and people are just like, "Oh, but we need to talk to them. We need to.
Okay.
We have disclosure. I mean,
Yeah.
we're already being told, yes, there's something out there. Yes,
There's
it
something
is
out there.
cruising around our naval ships, and it's done it
Yeah.
on both oceans. And there's all kinds of
Well,
activity in the Indian Ocean. But do we really want to take on something that we can't even keep a radar lock on?
no.
No, we don't want to do
And
that.
well, at the beginning of the show, you were saying, they found out that U.S. gave, or well, let's put it
Yes,
like it. We won't say, but there were secrets from another country that were released or leaked, and it's like because people want war, they want the money, they want the
yes,
power, and here, that's a show of strength as to who can piss the farthest. Excuse my language.
that's okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Oop, you can bleep that
Or
out.
make the most interesting,
But
pattern. It's crazy.
death and destruction. When we look at 9/11, to us it's a horrifying thing. In other countries, it's Thursday night.
Yeah,
It's like buildings collapse on people, people dying horrifying deaths. Then they turn around and go do things. War does nothing. It's all it is testosterone unchecked,
I
and
agree.
and we've lost the feminine balance of going. Those poor people. Those don't you feel for someone and these terrorism, even American terrorism, people from our country who are terrorists, they're cowards. Going up and shooting children, going into movie theaters, going places where there are people
Who can't
who
defend
have no way to
themselves?
defend themselves. It's a coward thing.
Yes, it
And so
is.
it's not a brave thing. It's not a thing for God. You think the consciousness or God or anybody else is looking at that going, yeah, that was a great thing to do.
I
You
think
killed
there's
a
some
lot of
very
children.
surprised people after those incidents.
Oh, and yeah, I hope they are.
Yeah, I'm pretty
And
sure.
then they'll go, "What did you learn?" You know, and if they didn't learn to have empathy, they may be coming back. But again and
But in
again
a
and
very
then again.
different, but in a very different life experience, I would think.
Hopefully, and because you can. That's a very primitive thing to want to hurt people, to think that
Yes,
it's a joy, like like again, the towers when they were shot, for people to that did that were so proud of that, you know,
yes,
and the horror that it brings. But they do that in their own countries,
I
and
know,
it's
right?
like to their own people,
I don't get that
and
either.
I just don't get the constant doing it. It's like you're killing your own people. What are you learning? So that's one reason the ancients are like, no, maybe we don't need that. But they do watch what we do, and they try to keep us down on the nuclear because
Yeah.
we would have been evaporated centuries. I mean, 50 years
Yes.
ago in the
Yes.
world if these idiots could really get the button. And hopefully they'll be able to keep that track of that because that's what kills. I mean, it will kill
Everything.
everything. And then, but it'll be a long death for the planet because it won't just kill it. Everything dies slowly, and then it takes a while for that to wind down, and then it may be able to go on for centuries just spinning.
Well, it would
Without.
have to have a clearing. I mean, what we have right now, like
Yep,
Fukushima,
it would have to be a complete, end.
and
Yep.
Fukushima is still spewing because they can't contain it. But you don't ever hear people talking about
No.
the fact that this is still being put into the Pacific Ocean, and it's just flowing down through the
Yep.
Indian Ocean, coming down, getting into the Atlantic, and they're like, "Oh, well, it dissipates." Well, not when it's continuously spewing. And they have
No,
not been able to even get robots in there that haven't melted to be able to ascertain if there is a way to contain it. They can't do it.
they
So,
can't do it. We do not have the technology.
we already have an extinction level event that nobody ever talks
Yep.
about because they can't fix it, so they don't want that in the media spotlight.
No.
So, you
Well,
know,
there's a
it's
lot
just
they don't want in the
crazy.
spotlight. It's like, no.
Yeah,
And what are they going to do with it? Put it in a rocket, shoot it out into outer space? Well, it'll come out somewhere. It may not make it out of our atmosphere. Where's it going to go? Well, we've got all this crap. It just takes one or two of those nuclear things to really just kill
yeah,
the
everything.
planet, and we have tons of them.
Yeah,
And
and building more all the time, and usually
all the time.
twin with twin
Yeah.
towers. I mean,
And that's, yeah. So
yeah,
it's like,
it's
no wonder
crazy.
they don't want to fool with us. And the reason that when the planet shifts, the poles shift, and that also brings the consciousness. You get more people who are psychic, and more things that are happening, and more communication with them if they want to try to help us during
Yeah,
times where they feel like it's getting it's going to the water level's going to rise or something. They will step in to try and keep some people alive. But this has happened before. I mean, that's the Anunnaki story. They were here. Some of them, when
yeah,
they saw and they talked about the pole shifting,
hmm,
and that's what caused the flood.
yeah,
And so most of them left, some of them stayed. The ones that stayed to help us, they eventually died or were killed because there was a purging that went on after the flood. After when they decided we
hmm,
don't want these gods or people or strange these creatures amongst us anymore, they killed them all.
yeah.
And in the Bible, they talk about going to the forbidden, the what is it?
Forbidden Garden.
No, not the Forbidden Garden, the Promised Land.
Oh,
They said, well,
yeah,
there are giants in them. The giants were some of the leftovers, and because we had people who are 7, 8 feet tall
yeah,
from that, And they said, well, before you can go in there, you have to go in there and kill them. And they kill. I mean, everywhere they were killing them. I mean, there is a story. I don't know if it's true yet, but in Egypt, they found a room full of very large hands that were bounties. So if you killed one of these people, you brought back the hand and you got your bounty. And they found
Interesting. I
like
hadn't
two or
heard that.
so, yeah, like 2 or 3 thousand pretty good sized hands, not normal size.
Well, you know what I'm going to be doing when we get through
You need to look.
going to find
And
that.
it,
Yes.
and also, and it could be a BS story or it could be a real story.
You never know.
Uh,
That's why you have to do the research.
you have to do the
I mean,
research, but it would make sense because they were after the main ones left. They got what they needed and they went, "We're out of here. We've screwed it up. Let's get out of here."
yeah,
And they were here just to get the gold. Did they get the gold? Yes, but they did so much more.
yeah,
And then they also had all that technology we can't explain that we have not gotten back to, that
yeah,
we're approaching some of it, approaching some of it, but we won't reach that level, if they don't want us to, if they don't
yeah,
want us to be able to irritate them more. And, because right now, really, if they came down and went, look, y'all are killing your planet. This planet is important to all of us. Knock it off. They'd say, "Shut up! You can't tell me what to do. I think I'll eat you for supper."
yeah,
I mean, we would be shooting them and eating them at McDonald's as alien burgers. So they can't just come down and say, "We come in peace. We want to help you," because they really then it may not be peace the way we think it is. Um, and there are some of them before that were wonderful and gracious and helped people and precious to us. And then there were some that they protected us from the really bad instincts. And
yeah,
if you look at the political climate we've got right now, you have the same thing going on. You have these ultra, ultra, ultra rich people who want to keep the poor poor because they need the workers. They need the worker bees. They don't want you to reach where they are. They want to keep you where they are. It's the same thing. It's been that way all through humanity, and it comes from them as well.
indeed.
So what we need to do is get our act together. And I don't know that we will, but I can hope that we will. But if we don't, everything that lives dies, and then what dies comes back. So,
Yes.
one way, form, or fashion.
Everything
And
old is new again.
old is new again, and even you can pickle it, but at some point, it's gotta do its thing. It'll come back.
I'm Southern. We
So
pickle everything.
we pickle everything,
Yes.
and but the soul is a never-ending thing. The spirit is a never-ending thing. The body, even though we don't think it is, it breaks down and it continues on into the next phase.
Yeah.
And we've separated that. We put ourselves in little tin boxes and pickle ourselves with formaldehyde that's poisonous to everything. It doesn't stop you from decomposing, it just keeps you viewable for a
Fresh.
week. But then when
Fresh
you're
for
in
a
the
week.
ground, and I hope I'm not disturbing anybody. What I'm saying is, but
It's Halloween month, so it's okay to
it's
disturb
Halloween month.
people.
But I think it would be better if we could go back to nature, and because our energy then feeds the earth, and now we're keeping that away from the earth.
Yeah.
We're not becoming part of the earth in that way, and it's recycling. And we've taken ourselves because we think we're so important. We put ourselves in little containers pickled, and it can't access us. But if it does, if our boxes leak, then it poisons the water and the soil, and you know
Yeah.
it's not so bad. You're going to go back to dirt one way, form, or fashion. So
Well, and
go back to dirt.
to to that point, how many of these lakes that we have built using our lock systems trying to get from point A to point B, right? Um,
Yeah,
and we've flooded cemeteries
yeah,
and all kind. We flooded
It,
everything that was there in the path of the land that was bought.
yeah,
So, I mean, because I've had to work cases that were, you know, people were having spirits, wet spirits, in their home,
yeah,
and they were living on a lake that had been, you know, a whole valley had been
a cemetery.
flooded to make these lakes to get the locks down to the coast.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, and TVA did
crazy.
that all over Chattanooga.
Absolutely, they did it
And
all the way through here.
yeah, and and water is an interesting thing. Spirits, it amplifies frequency and energy. So spirits can move through water.
Yes.
The thing of where spirits couldn't cross over moving water is because it breaks up their vibration.
Hmm.
But if they're in the water, they can travel. If you're trying to cross over water, the spirit, it can break up their frequency and disrupts them. So it makes it where it's not easy for them.
Yeah.
But in water, oh yeah, they can travel. Whoop, but that too, sometimes it's another trap. If they're there and they were living there because that was the land they were walking on, and now it's underwater, or the ships that have sunk, things like that. The spirits don't necessarily live in the water, but then there are some that do because that's all. They don't know how to separate to go. Oh, I'm dead. I can move on and I don't have to be with this. And they're still trying to figure out or explain or they're going, well, I'm stuck in this. It's like being stuck, and they don't know what to do about it.
Yeah.
So they're still functioning, but if you're a spirit, you can move past it and not be in any of it. You could be in the consciousness and move it on to the next thing. So yeah, but no, where my mother, when she was a little girl in a place called Spring City, there was a place called Seven Oaks that they loved. They lived on it for a long time, and then when they did the TVA came through and flooded the house. I mean, the house was still there. There were cemeteries, there were houses, the
Yeah.
well houses, everything. It just covered it in. It's like the "Oh Brother Wherefore Art Thou." When they flooded it and the
Yeah.
house went, I went, "That's actually kind of what it
True.
was."
It is
Some of it they
exactly
went
what
through with a bulldozer, and then some of it they didn't do a bulldozer. It was too much. They just filled it in
they did just
with
fill it
water,
in. A lot of it.
and a lot of it. And but what goes underwater comes back up at some point. So
Yes, it does. Well, we've got about 5 minutes left,
all right,
and I want people to know how to find you. So if you can do your social media and the store
sure.
and stuff,
If they want to find me, you need a big metal detector. You have to go on the beach. No, but the easiest way to get me or to contact me is Mark Elliot Fults on Facebook. So it's Mark Elliot, ELLIOTT, my last name FULTS. And that's the best way to catch me. Uh, because I have an email thing, but I am overwhelmed with. When I started my store and cut, when I made the mistake of having to find a thing for insurance, and they found out, the scammers and things, I get thousands of emails all the dang time. So right now I have probably 4 or 5 thousand emails. So everything gets lost in the scammer load. So just contact me on Facebook. Um, and YouTube. I've got a YouTube channel, just Mark Fultz, Fults. Pretty soon I'll have some more books coming out. I got my Me No Grandma's Good Old Cookbook. I've got the
which I am
Psychic Worm
waiting for.
Stitch. I am too. It's 500 pages so far. And I've got the Psychic Worm Stitch. Will I will tell all of the things I've been talking about. I will be covering that, and have the meditations and stuff. How to get into the Akashic Library, how to get to your ancient self, and let me see. Then I'm going to do the Fat Psychic Cooking Show because you got to have a break. You got to have fun.
Yeah.
And I'm going to have the Fat Psychic Cooking Show. On YouTube, you can find the Universal Truths, the show we did for a while. That we'll go back to when I get a chance to get everything else started, possibly, potentially.
You might be a little
And
busy at the moment.
I'm really, really, really busy right now. And
Yes.
then we're gonna see. But like right now, I'm doing um I'm trying to think what it is. Austin Lawrence is doing Dead Chronicles, and that's who I'm working with some pretty dramatic stuff right now. So I don't know. I think it's all going to be fun. It's all good. So if you want to catch me, just look me up on Facebook. And if you're in the area, you can see me at my store on Sundays and Saturdays. And if you need a reading or anything like that, contact me on Facebook and send me your number, and I'll set up a date with you, to do readings. Um, Hopefully, I can. Right now, even though I'm talking all this stuff, I'm still a poor psychic right now, so I have to be able to afford to do a website, do stuff like that. So as soon as I get that going, you'll be able to just go to all of it.
Yes.
But but if you go on my Facebook page, you can find pretty much anything I'm doing, and that's about it. I mean, I've the Fat Psychic will be coming soon, but I'm waiting until the good old grandma's mean old grandma's good old cookbook comes out, and we're real close to that. The Psychic Worm Stitch, and then I have a book called Headless Ghosts and More that is pretty well done. So I've really got three or four books ready to go.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. So, but that's pretty much for me. That's it. That's If you want to catch me, just get a butterfly net and chase me down on Facebook, or get a metal detector and look me up on the ocean. On the
There you
beach.
go.
You'll find me. Yeah,
I have had so much fun with you, Mark. Thank you for coming
it's been
on with
fun.
me.
Oh, thank
It's
you.
you're just such a font of information and you share it so well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. They're probably going. He's full of it. He's
I
full
don't
of
think
all that
so.
stuff. But no.
I
But
think you're pretty on spot on, really.
well,
Oh,
thank you.
and for
Thank you.
everyone listening, tonight is the Orionids meteor shower. So
Oh
find
yeah.
Orion. That's the direction they're coming from. And happy hunting, happy watching, and make sure you take a
Yeah.
blanket because it's nippy here. So
Yeah.
have fun with that, and we will see you next week. Same cat time, same cat channel, and we are just having a great time this October. And people that are special like Mark, there's very few people like Mark, and
I
that's a
can
shame
rectify
because you're
that.
excellent. So thanks,
Yep.
everyone. We will talk to you next time. Be blessed.
Thank you.